Let us begin. So the last time we studied the word, we had started with the golden lampstand, and we had begun with looking at one particular point, which was that we needed a cleansing through the word of God. We saw the laver, we saw that it represented cleansing through the word, and we began the study last time that the reason for our ineffectiveness in our spiritual life is because of lack of cleansing. So before we can get into a deep communion with God, we need a cleansing through the word by obeying what the word tells us to do. And one of the things we saw was that the laver, there was no measurement given to the laver in the book as to how big it was, how tall it was, how deep it was. We don't have any of those numbers. So one of the reasons could be it means that it has a limitless application. Okay, it had limitless application. Then we went on to look at the golden lampstand, and it was in the as we enter the holy place, there were three things. One was the golden lampstand, the other one was the table of showbread, and the third one was the altar of incense. So we looked at the golden lampstand, and we looked at that some of these artistic impressions of how it could possibly look like. So it had one single lampstand, and there were 6 branches that were coming out. And there was ornamentation or decoration on it of an almond bud, and the flower. And we counted it, and it came out to be like 66 flower parts. And we saw that the lampstand was a picture of Christ. We also saw that the church is also called as a golden lampstand in Revelation. So as Christ was the light, as Christ is the light of the world, Christ also tells that we are also the light of the world. So we also saw that the lampstand was it was not melted and cast and made, but God gives the specification that it must be hammered and made. So it was beaten and made. So that beating shows the suffering of Christ. And we saw that even the church, even the believers, we saw some references in Acts that even through great tribulations, we must enter the kingdom of heaven. So suffering is also a part of a believer's life. We saw that part, and then so we saw about sanctification. We saw that Jesus Christ is the Word. We saw the 66 books in the Bible and 66 flower parts on the lampstand. Okay, now we will go to another part of the lampstand, which is trimming the wick. So there is this wick, there is this oil that is put in the lamp, and there is this thread that is the wick, which burns, and it burns, and it shines the light. So after some time, there are these burnt part of that wick which must be cleansed, which must be cleaned. If it is not cleaned, that slowly the brightness of the light will begin to grow dimmer and dimmer. So therefore, regularly that wick of a lamp, of an oil lamp, must be regularly cleaned so that it can burn bright. So that was one of the duties that the priest had to do. So let's read that verse. Please read for me. Exodus chapter 30, verses 7 and 8. So we are still looking at the golden lampstand, and we are looking at how it was maintained. So Exodus chapter 30, verses 7 and 8.
And Aaron shall burn thereon sweet incense every morning. When he dresseth the lamps, he shall burn incense upon it. And when Aaron lighteth the lamp at even, he shall burn incense upon it, a perpetual incense before the Lord throughout your generations.
So this is one thing that Aaron himself used to do, that he used to. So this portion comes where it's speaking about the altar of incense. While mentioning about that, there is this line about while they are putting the incense, there is one more thing that Aaron is going to do, and that is he's going to maintain the lampstand, the lamp that is on the lampstands, that he's going to clear the wick and he's going to cleanse it. So that is one thing that Aaron himself was doing. And there is the oil that is given to the supplied to keep the lamp burning. So we can read it in Exodus chapter 27, verse 20 and 21. We will not read it, but that's the reference where you will see that the oil was brought by the people of Israel from olive, clear oil of beaten olives was brought to keep the lampstand burning, to keep the lamps burning. Now, let's read Numbers chapter 8, 1 to 3. Numbers chapter 8, verses 1 to 3. Can we read that? Numbers chapter 8, verse
And
1 to 3.
The Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron, and say unto him, When thou lightest the lamps, the 7 lamps shall give light over against the candlestick. And Aaron did so. He lighted the lamps thereof over against the candlestick, as the Lord commanded Moses.
So Aaron is the high priest, and he is lighting the lamp. He is taking care of the wick, of cleaning it, and of maintaining the brightness. Now, this picture of Aaron trimming the lamps is a picture of Jesus Christ tending to his church. Okay, in John chapter 15, verses 1 to 3, Gospel of John, chapter 15, verses 1 to 3. Can we read that? A picture of how Jesus Christ is trimming the lamp.
I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth no fruit, he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, and it may bring forth more fruit. Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you.
So Jesus says that every branch that does not bear fruit will be cut off, and every branch that bears fruit, Jesus will prune it. So when we prune a branch, the leaves are cut off. Some parts of it is cut really deep, and the branch will look completely dead. The whole leaves are gone, its beauty is gone at different places. There will be deep cuts by knife, and it will look it's dead. Okay, there's a pruning process that a good branch will go through. It shows the suffering and the discipline that will come through our life to cleanse us. So what is the difference between a branch that is cut off and a branch that is pruned? The cut branches, it is cut along with the leaves and it is thrown away. So while it is thrown away, for some time its leaves will be green, it will look good, but eventually it will wither and die. But a branch that is pruned, it may look dead, but it will come back to life again. It will come back with more leaves. It will come back with more flowers. It will come back with more fruits. Okay, so we have this verse in the Psalms which says, the affliction of a righteous man are many, but the Lord delivers him from out of them all. So no matter how much pruning a believer goes through, he will come out of it again. The Lord will make sure that he will come out of it again. He will not leave him halfway through suffering to die. He will bring him out. The believer, the one who trusts in the Lord, will blossom again. He will flourish again. So this trimming of the lamp is the picture of Jesus tending to his church. Now, a more picture can be seen in how Jesus speaks to the churches in Revelation. Okay, now in the book of Revelation, we see that Jesus gives a word to John and says that send this word to the 7 churches. And Jesus is giving his feedback to the churches about how they are doing. And it's very nice to see that how Jesus gives feedback. Okay, so we have feedback sessions in our offices and workplaces. Okay, and how every 6 months there is an appraisal, there is a feedback of how we are doing, what is going on, what is the good point, bad point. And the world is learning how to give feedback. The world is just learning which is the correct way to give feedback to another person. They have all these different systems. They try this way, that way. Okay, which is the most effective way so that the person will not get crushed under criticism, but actually will flourish and will perform better. They do all this research. So when we look at the Bible and we see how Jesus gives the feedback to the churches, so we see that the general way that Jesus gives the feedback to the churches, he starts with a good point. He gives one good praise about what the church is doing right. Then he gives a point of correction. And then he gives again a good point of what the church is doing right. So it's like a sandwich, a good point, a point of correction, and he ends again with a good point. That's a general way. But if we look, there are two exceptions, two types of exceptions. One is the church of Smyrna and Philadelphia, they did not get any correction. Okay, because the church of Smyrna was church that was under suffering. Okay, it was suffering, and Jesus did not add to their suffering by giving a rebuke or by giving a harsh word or by giving a correction. They were already overloaded with the suffering that they were going through. And therefore, Jesus did not add to their suffering. He did not give any correction to them. He just told them to be faithful. To the church in Philadelphia, it was a church that had little power, but was being faithful to God. And it was a church, it's a Philadelphia, it's a church of love. And to that church also, Jesus did not give any correction. But to the church of Laodicea, Jesus had no good thing to say. Okay, and therefore it was full of correction. So these are the two kinds of exception that was there in the feedback. But to all the other churches, the general way Jesus gave a feedback was, or how he corrected the church was, he said something good about them. Then he gave some point of correction, and then he ended it with another good point of how they were doing, so that they will not be discouraged. So they were encouraged and they were built up, and that's how Jesus trimmed the lamp, trimmed his lampstand. That's how Jesus gave feedback or corrected the churches. Feedback is a very, very, business-like word, but that's not. This is Jesus correcting the churches, building up the churches, and how he is looking after the churches. So we see that picture when Aaron is trimming the lamp in the holy place. Then let's read Hebrews chapter 12, verses 4 to 11. Can we read Hebrews chapter 12, verses 4 to 11? Hebrews chapter 12.
Ye have not yet resisted unto blood, striving against sin, and ye have forgotten the exhortation which speaketh unto you as unto children. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, nor faint when thou rebukest thou art rebuked of him. From thou the Lord loveth his chastening, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth. If ye endure chastening, God dealeth with you as with sons. And what son is he whom the Father chasteneth not? But if ye be without chastisement, whereof all are partakers, then are ye bastards and not sons. Furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh which corrected us, and we gave them reference. Shall we not much rather be a subjection unto the Father of spirits and live? For they verily for a few days chastened us after their own pleasure, but he for our profit, that we might be partakers of his holiness. Now no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterwards it yieldeth and peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which is exercised thereby.
So we see here about that it is not only a corporate trimming that happens to the churches, but we also as individuals are disciplined by the Lord. Okay, the Lord wants us to be in the image of his son. God wants us to be in the image of his son, so he will discipline us. He will make us go in the right way. Okay, and whenever we are disciplined, we will not find it to be pleasant. We will not find it to be comfortable. In fact, it's comfortable is putting it very it's an understatement. We may find it very painful. We may find it very distressing. We may find it very confusing. We may wonder, why is this happening? Did I not serve you, Lord? Am I not serving you? What am I doing wrong? As Asaph said in his psalm, every day I am being chastened. Every morning I am being chastened. Every day I get up, I get some rebuke. What is happening? Am I not being faithful? But it is God who is training us, who is pruning us, so that we may be more and more fruitful. And in this process, we may feel confusion, sometimes we may feel anger, and we do not know, we may not even be able to understand what is going on in our heart and mind. There is no words to describe what is all the turmoil that is happening, but the Lord understands everything, and he is very patient with us, and he is very gentle with us, because even though it is temporarily painful, but it says afterward it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness. And it says it is a training process, because last sentence it says those who have been trained by it. In other translation, it says those who have been exercised by it. So it is a training process for something that the Lord wants us to do. We need to be trained by it. Okay, we need some training before we can actually do the work that the Lord wants us to do. So the Lord is training us. He has us in his hands. He has us protected. Nothing will go out of hand. When he is pruning, he knows exactly where to put the cut, how much to put the cut. He knows we will blossom again. He knows we will become fruitful again. So some of the things and unpleasantness that we see, they are temporary. because God will rescue his people from all their afflictions, because that is the nature of God. He will not leave us in our affliction. So we see that the disciplining comes from the hand of God. Okay. And we see that the priests take the charred portion of the wick and carry it out of the tabernacle. They don't leave it there. They just carry that burnt part and they carry it out of the tabernacle. In Psalms 103, verse 12, we see, as far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our wrongdoings from us. Okay, so he not only just prunes us, he takes those wrongdoings and he just puts it far away from us. So he makes us righteous. So this is what we see, some of the lessons that we learn from the golden lampstand, and there are many more, I am sure, that can be learned. Now let's go forward, and now the next thing that we see is the table of showbread. So let's read Exodus chapter 25, verses 23 to 30. Exodus chapter 25, verses 23 to 30.
Thou shalt also make a table of shittim wood. 2 cubits shall be the length thereof, and a cubit the breadth thereof, and a cubit and a half the height thereof. And thou shalt overlay it with pure gold, and make thereto a crown of gold round about. And thou shalt make unto it a border of an hand breadth round about, and thou shalt make a golden crown to the border thereof round about. And thou shalt make it 4 rings for gold, and put the rings in the 4 corners that are on the 4 feet thereof. Over against the border shall the ring be 4 places of the staves to bear the table, and thou shalt make the staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold, and the table may be borne with them. And thou shalt make the dishes thereof, and spoons thereof, and cover thereof, and bowls thereof, and to cover withal of pure gold shalt thou make them. And thou shalt set upon the table shewbread before me always.
Okay, so this tells us about this other piece of furniture that is there in the holy place. It is called the table of showbread. So it is basically a table on which bread is kept. Okay, so one artistic description, I took it from a book, so that is why it looks little broken, but this is one of the artistic impression of how it could have looked. Okay, it is a small table. It is cover made of shittim wood or acacia wood, and it is totally covered with gold, and there is a golden rim or a crown around the table. And there is one more inside, if you can see it, there is one more inside at a hand breadth. And on that table, there will be bread kept. Okay, so the showbread, the word showbread comes from the phrase bread of the face or bread of the presence, because the bread was kept in the presence of God. Okay. So this bread was kept in the presence of God, so therefore it is called as the showbread, because it comes from the phrase bread of the presence. Now, when we look at bread, there are few things about it, that there are 12 loaves of bread that are kept on that table. Okay, so there are certain numbers which mean something. So when we look at bread, primarily when we read or when we hear about bread, we think about Jesus, because he is the true bread from heaven. Okay, he is the true bread from heaven. And we see that in this whole process, we will see something in which it says that the priest will eat that bread. Okay, not every priest, but Aaron and his sons were the only ones who were allowed to eat from that bread. So it shows the sustenance that Christ gives to his children. Another thing is Jesus was born in Bethlehem, which means house of bread. Okay, so one of the things we can look at is John chapter 6, Gospel of John chapter 6, and it is filled with many references to bread. Let's read some. John chapter 6, verse 35.
And Jesus said unto them, I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth on me shall never thirst.
And John chapter 6, verses 49 to 51.
Your fathers did eat manna in the wilderness, and are dead. This is the bread which cometh down from heaven, that a man may eat thereof and not die. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world.
So when we look at bread, it says, if anyone eats from this bread, he will live forever. The main point of eating bread is to live. Okay, so eating bread is, we are eating the bread to live. Okay, and when we look at this picture, we see it, one of the pictures is of Jesus Christ. Okay, now in Leviticus chapter 24, verses 5 to 9, we see that we will not read the whole thing, but it speaks about how those 12 loaves of bread are made. Okay, so there are 12 loaves of bread which are kept on that golden table, and how it is supposed to be made is given in this portion, Leviticus chapter 24, verses 5 to 9. It should be made from fine flour. There should be 12 loaves, and there is a measure of how much it should contain, how much flour it should contain. And when the bread is kept on the table, it is kept in 2 piles or 2 rows. So now the word over there is not very clear whether it is 2 rows or 2 piles. Okay, so but whatever it is, a stack, and there are 6 loaves in each stack. And then there is frankincense that is put on each row. So it is not put on the bread. From what I understand, it is kept in a censer, a golden spoon that is used, and that is what was used to keep on the bread. And 7 days, this bread remains in the holy place. And on the Sabbath, the priest will come. He will take away this, or it was not just one priest. There were some eight priests or more who used to come to do this particular ritual. That they will come, they will take away this bread, and they will replace it with fresh bread that was made. Okay, for 7 days this bread remains in the presence of God. And then on the 7th day, when it is removed from the table, new bread is kept, and this old bread, Aaron and his sons, they eat that bread. So this is what is happening on the table of showbread. Okay, so one thing that we can notice is that there is 12 breads. So each loaf is for one tribe of Israel. Okay, and the size of the loaf is the same, even though the number of people in each tribe is different. Okay, Naphtali, I think, is much smaller than Judah. Okay, but still the loaf for Naphtali is as big as the loaf for Judah, which shows that there is no partiality before God. Okay, the grace and the sustenance and the grace of God that is given is the same for everyone. He makes no partiality. Secondly, we see that in 7 days, this is another picture of what is happening. 7 days, that loaf, if it is taken as the picture of Jesus Christ, it shows in the past eternity the fellowship that God the Father had with Jesus Christ. But on the Sabbath day, when the priest comes and eats that bread, it shows how the Father gave his Son for his children, that they may also live through him. Okay, so this is a picture of that, a way of looking at that picture. Let's read Romans chapter 8, verse 32.
He that spared not his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things?
Okay, so I hope that this picture is clear of how that bread remained for 7 days in the presence of God. That is a picture of the past eternity. And when the priest come and take that bread, it is a picture of God delivering his Son for the sake of his people, so that his children, so that the priest, as the priest, his children would live through his Son. First, let's also read 1 John chapter 1, verses 1 to 4. 1 John chapter 1, verses 1 to 4.
That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon, and our hands have handled of the word of life. For the life was manifested, and we have seen it, and bear witness, and shew unto you that eternal life, which was with the Father, and was manifested unto us. That which we have seen and heard declare we unto you, that ye also may have fellowship with us. And truly, our fellowship is with the Father, and with his Son Jesus Christ. And these things write we unto you, that your joy may be full.
So Jesus was given for us. The Father gave his Son as bread. As bread is, we take and eat, and it becomes a part of our body. After eating it, after few days, nobody can cut open our body and say, okay, in our hand, this portion is that bread, this portion is that bread. You cannot do that. It cannot happen. The food becomes part of the body. So when we take part of Jesus Christ, we are supposed to become one with him. Okay, we are supposed to become assimilated with him. Okay, so that is one of the pictures that we can see of Father freely giving his Son for his children, that they may live through him. And on a side note, we know about David running away from Saul. And we know that at one point he was hungry and he asked the priest to bring out the bread. Okay, this is the bread that he ate. Okay, this bread was not supposed to be eaten by even by any priest. Only certain type of priest, or Aaron and his sons, only they are allowed to eat this bread. But David, he was not a priest, but he went and ate this bread. Okay, so this was the bread that David ate. Let me see what else I can cover. Okay, so I'll come to the last part of today's word, that this bread is in the holy place. So we can imagine this picture. Okay, the priest doing his priestly duty, washed from the laver in the holy place, under the light of the golden lampstand. That's where he finds the bread. Okay, so we may wonder when we read the word of God, why we are not finding some understanding some things, why it is not opening up to us. Okay, why some people are enjoying the word and why we are not enjoying the word. Because to enjoy the word, to enjoy the bread or the sustenance that comes from the word, there is there is a situation that needs to be there. It is that we need to obey the word. We need to get intimate with God. We need to be under the light of Jesus, under that golden lampstand. He should be the light and life of our direction of our life. And only when we are willing to walk under the direction that he gives, under his light, that's when we receive the sustenance from the hand of God. So may God bless us with this word.